had a moment like that. But I guess I didn't go down that deep after that moment. But it was an eye-opening moment. We all grew up playing games. Everyone's been to an arcade in our generation, and like a lot of people did probably think Street Fighter 2 was cool, even though if they didn't get into fighting games or FGC. But then, like for me, it was also the Dreamcast that kind of opened my eyes. It was Third Strike, I think. I think it was the one. Maybe there's like a game that contains Third Strike and Second Impact or something. I don't know if it was that version, but a friend had it, and he was doing like a training mode stuff. And that was the first time I'd ever seen a training mode in a fighting game. I was like, and that's a big moment because you're thinking, oh wait, like this is like a tool to help you get good at these kinds of games. And I knew like people like were good at the game. You go to the arcade and you know that one guy's like really good. Like and if someone can beat him, then you'd be a big deal. But to see that training mode was a big deal. It's funny because that friend is now one of the guys that helped run the Jazzy circuit in Arlington, Texas. So and I kind of reunited with him later after I got into the FGC. But he was the one that kind of got me into the idea of fighting games being more than just button mashing and two-hit combos, right? So it's very cool. Also, I guess the Dreamcast was kind of a starting point for you in terms of opening your eyes to that kind of stuff. So I guess something that's also very interesting about you, Pat, is that you're also in game development now, right? So I don't know how much you could talk about like your history of the game development stuff. Maybe you can give kind of a general overview of like obviously you're into games, and you're into fighting games, and but games in general, and of course people from our generation, it's kind of a dream job to work in the industry, right? I know that it's not always easy.
I understand
obviously.
why it's seen as a dream job.
But it's kind of at one point you must have gotten into the path of doing that as a career, like you said. Instead of become a lawyer, which I mean, maybe things.
I don't think I ever had it cut out to be a lawyer, though I did take a practice LSAT once.
I think you'd be good at making argumentation. And
I was a debater in high school.
I think you'd be a strong debater.
I was actually. So the funny thing is, debate was then this will tie back into work, I promise. But in high school, I was a debater. And that was what got me comfortable with 1v1 competition. And all the hard feelings that people go through when they lose in a fighting game, they're like, oh man, that was embarrassing, right? I couldn't do anything. Getting out-argued for 45 minutes in front of a judge is excruciating, right? But I had a coach who like the first time I was like a freshman, the first time I went up against a senior, she was like, I was like, man, this sucks, I'm gonna lose, like, I'm not gonna do good at this tournament. And my coach is just like, it's a learning experience. I was like, oh, so if I lose, then it's just learning. That's great, right? Like that kind of mentality helped me get better at fighting games because I would go and I'd lose and I wouldn't care as much. And what I found was that I liked fighting games more than debate. So at debate tournaments, there's a certain generation of debater who will remember me as the kid on his laptop playing fucking Gundam Wing or Street Fighter. Or absolutely. Because in between rounds, I'd just break it out and I'd start mashing. I actually did play Gundam Wing with another dude who knew how to play it at a debate tournament once, which was great.
That's a very specific game.
Absolutely. Especially in 2002, I think is when it was, right? So years after it came out, there's this one kid at El Cerrito High who was at a debate tournament and was like, oh, you're playing Gundam Wing? Hold up, let me see my Shenlong. And I was like, all right, we're about to do this. Go Gauchos. Anyway, so I had always been into fighting games for a long time, but it also, like I said, been into games in general. And growing up, I tried to get into programming, but it was really hard to access as a kid, especially with not much resources around me. Like I'd try and get books every now and then, but I had no idea what I was doing. And it felt hopeless. But I did like writing. And so in high school, I started writing as just kind of like freelancing or actually doing stuff for free at first. Writing about shareware games and occasionally reviewing stuff or covering news, that kind of thing. Just like on the side while also being a student. And I didn't really have much in the way of explicit career goals throughout high school and college, other than at one point I wanted to work in an arcade. But it's like, even then I was like, this is not a career, right? so I'd been writing about games for a long time, and my first kind of full-time job out of college, I was working for PC World magazine.
Okay.
I was running their how-tos. I would also like review TVs. I reviewed some Wi-Fi stuff, you know. But we had a little bit of games coverage, so I'd also do games coverage. I freelanced for a couple different publications as well, so I had like a little bit of a writing portfolio that I'd been building up. I'd covered E3 a couple times, et cetera. And I knew that I didn't want to stay in the kind of the consumer publishing area because it felt like it was not quite as interesting, right? Like technology when we were growing up with it, like in the 90s, is like all constantly new stuff coming out, and oh my god, like computers can do way much more. And year over year, you're seeing these really impressive differences. By the time we got to like the mid-aughts and then like the early 2010s, like stuff kind of stabilized a little bit. Smartphones were exciting. TVs were kind of a commodity. Most of what I was doing was teaching old people how to uninstall the new Windows and reinstall XP. Like that's
mandatory
what we
skill.
Doing. Yeah, absolutely. Right. And you know, honestly, something which like learning how to use and diagnose a PC and like really learn my way around it was very good for me. Don't get me wrong, right? I still help people with that kind of stuff all the time, like even in a semi-professional capacity. But I knew I didn't want to stay in consumer side stuff. And there was this publication, it's still around actually, it's called Insert Credit. It used to be like a video game blog, now it's more of a podcast. The Insert Credit homies are near and dear friends of mine. Actually, the founder and editor-in-chief and whatever other title is, he lives like half a mile down the street. His name's Brandon. He was the editor-in-chief of Game Developer magazine at the time. And I knew that I wanted, I knew that he was doing more interesting work than what I was doing. And that moving away from consumer-facing work would let me talk to people, like talk to more professionals about more interesting things, right? I think game development is a fascinating industry, right? You're constructing fantasy, right? And it is there's just so much interesting work going on there that I was like, well, this is way more interesting than what I'm doing. And it's also not the kind of gig that your average games writer would necessarily be good for covering, because most of what games writers do, or especially we're doing at the time, was focused on reviews, previews, like consumer access stuff, which just wasn't really what I wanted to do. So I worked with Brandon on Insert Credit stuff, got to know him. Eventually, he brought me in to backfill him as editor-in-chief of Game Developer magazine. So I did that for a year and a half, and it was super fun. I got to work with, so the GDC is by the same parent company, so I got to work with a lot of people in games, got to learn more about how they do their stuff at indie level all the way to AAA. Got to meet some like absolute legends in the field.
It's kind of your writing got you into this, opened the doors to all this, because you were writing for Game Developer magazine, which is
editing more than writing, but yes.
Editing, okay, But I mean, you got in with the game developers through your.
That was how I started to get closer to the industry, right?
Okay.
But the other thing was, as a fighting game player, you get closer to the core guts of the game than most other genres do.
Oh yeah.
These days, it's like, you know, you have speedrunners; they're also very close to the guts.
Oh,
or
yeah,
like if you're high level in anything, you probably understand like some pretty intricate nuances of how the stuff works.
Yeah.
But especially in like late teens, like late aughts, early 2010s, fighting game players were some of the kind of the most notoriously hardcore out of the bunch, right?
Sure.
We generally had a rep, right?
Yeah.
And so like when people would introduce me to other professionals, they'd be like, oh, he's the editor-in-chief of Game Developer magazine, but he also plays fighting games.
Yeah.
So like I got to know a lot of professionals, and we would bond over our shared love of fighting games. I remember, I don't know if you know the folks at Clay Entertainment. They did like Mark of the Ninja.
Yeah.
Also, God, I think Don't Starve was theirs.
Okay.
But Jamie Cheng is their founder and CEO, and he liked Third Strike. So we talked a lot about Third Strike.
Nice.
And actually, I just randomly ran into him on Fightcade a couple years ago, and he beat me. I was like, oh, good stuff, man.
Yeah,
like he's keeping it alive.
Yeah.
But everyone who works in the industry has a reason for getting into games professionally. And for a lot of them, fighting games, just like us, was the thing that really kind of got its hooks into us.
Yeah, I do think I have kind of a theory about like, saying that you're into fighting games is kind of seen a bit differently, right?
Yeah.
And in a game design sense, I think